it's very much trial and error. That's the beauty of it. You can change very quickly from, something that's not going so well. You can learn from that and move on from that and change it. So that's the great benefit we have.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello. My name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo's interviewing Gary Gorman. Jo and Gary have known each other for years, but only through social media. They finally met at the lovely Sharon Gaskin's Trainer Talk live last year, where Gary presented Jo with his book, which she is in. Gary Gorman is a negotiation specialist and works with teams to help them negotiate better deals, contracts and prices. Gary has been a freelance trainer and business owner since 2006 and works with clients such as Morrisons, Barrett Homes, DHL Logistics, Siemens and Costa Coffee. He mainly works with UK clients but also frequently travels to the Middle East to work with teams based there. Gary is a keen sports follower and music fan and lives in Grantham, Lincolnshire. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Gary Gorman of garygorman.co.uk, and Gary and I have known each other for a long time via social media, but we only actually met in person a few weeks ago at the Trainers Training Company event of Sharon Gaskin of an earlier show. So it's really funny now, Gary, isn't it, to now know each other really?
It is, Joe, after about 8 years, I think, something like that.
Exactly. So brilliant to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
My name's Gary Gorman, and I help teams negotiate better deals, contracts, and prices. I generally work with sales teams to help them do that, and I work mainly in the UK, but I'm frequently found on planes going out to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia about 4 times a year.
Wow. And is that hotter there than it is here at the moment?
Unbelievably, it probably is. It's probably about 40 there at the moment.
They've probably got better aircon than we have.
Yes, they have. Everywhere's aircon, yes. When I'm there this time of year, I don't spend a lot of time outdoors, as you can probably understand.
No, I can. I don't know that I'd even make it there in the first place. Never mind make it outside.
I do try and avoid these months. So it's generally 4 times a year, but contracted into about the last 8 months of the year.
And so when you're working in the UK, you work with your clients at client premises, and do you work from home other than that?
Yes, I'm home based when I'm not out with clients. So I have a room at home that I work from. Yes, that's right.
Yes. Yeah,
and I'm speaking from that right now. I should be in the garden, but I'm speaking from my office as we chat.
Yes, yeah, lovely. So tell us a bit more about why you do what you do. Most people I speak to on this podcast, me included, have gone through a number of iterations of what we do. Is that the case for you, or are you pretty much doing what you've ever done in whatever guise you're now in compared to before?
No, I once had a proper job. In fact, I've worked for 3 companies having proper jobs. I've always been in sales, I suppose, and that might go to my background. My father had his own second-hand car business, and I remember when I was sort of 14 to 18 or so in the school holidays, helping him out on these car patch, cleaning cars, answering the phone, and so on. So I've always been in a sort of sales environment. I fell into sales. I worked for Duracell batteries initially as a salesman, pounding the streets, selling torches and batteries.
Could have been worse. You could have been the bunny.
Exactly. I once won a bunny in fact, this might be why I got into training. Actually, my first induction week at Duracell was spent at the Gatwick Hilton Hotel. at the end of the course, they obviously have a test, and I happened to win that, which was fantastic, and I got a Duracell bunny. So this is the mid '80s, and I was proud of it, brought it home, and 30 years later, it was pristine, it was still in his box. 30 years later, having had 2 children who I thought might hurt it,
yes, yeah,
my wife damaged it.
Oh no! What did she do?
We are still talking, and she's still my wife. But I was a bit gutted at the time, so it lost one of its sticks.
Oh dear.
but yeah, exactly. I was I'd 4 or 5 years with Duracell. Then I moved to Wilkinson Swords, so I moved into the razor blade market and kind of progressed up the sales ladder, really. I became national account manager, managing the sort of head offices of Tesco and Superdrug and people like that. Latterly, I then moved to the Boots Company, and as again was in the sales team. I was trade sector manager there, so I was managing managers, so to speak. And like we all do, I guess I fell into training. And you said, why did I love it? And I just did. I can't really put my finger on why, but I just knew that when I was appointed head of training, I'd come home, if that sounds a bit trite, but yeah. I'd found my calling, I suppose. And I still love it. I was there 4 years until I left in 2006, and I was made redundant in 2006. I possibly would still be there to this day had that not happened. But I looked around and asked myself the question you've just asked me, Joe. What do I love to do? What do I want to do now? I've got a real fork in the road where I can go back on the sort of corporate wheel again, or I can decide to be in charge of my future. And I've always been the sort of person that would want to try things and fail rather than not try at all. So I set myself 2 years to make it work, because I love it. I love seeing people develop and flourish and blossom, and I get a great kick out of that. And I still do. 12 years later, I still have that thrill in my bones, I guess, to see people improve and work with them. And fortunately, I can now do it on my terms. I can now pick and choose who I work with, when I work, and also how I work with them as well. So the ability to have the choice as well as helping people, I've got the best job in the world.
It's interesting, isn't it, how often redundancy or enforced change in our careers actually sort of opens up a whole new world that we would perhaps not have thought of otherwise.
Yes, I think so. And I think that's where the influence of my father kicked in, I think, because obviously he was self-employed. I'd had 3 corporate jobs, with certainly Boots, a very large company. The other 2 were sort of weren't quite as big, but nevertheless were sort of high street names and household names. And I kind of, that I guess within me there was always this hunger and desire to set up my own business, but I didn't have the chance until that fork in the road appeared. Yes. So I did, and 12 years later I'm still here. So I must be doing something well.
Yes, exactly. So you talked about having the freedom to sort of work on your terms, to organise things as you want them to be. Tell us a bit more about that, because I think quite often when you come out of corporate, you have a tendency to continue in the same sort of format. So, you work 9 to 5 and you think that you have to do X, Y, Z, whatever that might be that the corporate world does. And actually, in my experience, as you sort of go through your business and you sort of start to develop it, you start to realize you don't actually have to follow any of those rules anymore. And you've just said that. So how does that work for you? What do you do differently?
I probably work longer than I used to do in terms of hours.
You're not selling it.
but I can certainly initially, yeah. I suppose I need to split it into two parts. When I set my business up 12 years ago, 2006, I I liked the flexibility of working whichever 18 hours of the day I chose.
Love it.
Since then, I've become more focused. I've become better at it. I've outsourced a number of things, which I think we're going to come on to. I've just become more organised with myself. The first 2 years I worked really hard, and I think if you're going into your own, setting up your own business, it isn't easy. Certainly initially it's very hard work, but the benefits are more than worth it once you push through that. So now I choose. I guess the sort of tipping point was when I could turn work away, when I could turn work down.
Yeah.
That gave me the flexibility that gave me the realization that, hang on, I'm choosing not to take that work now for other reasons, because I can use that time differently, either on my family or my health or self-improvement or whatever it might be. I had the freedom to choose how I spent that time, and that was frightening but liberating at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So how do you integrate the sort of family personal life with the work life now?
It's not as difficult to juggle now because my kids are 21 and 18 now, but obviously when I started they were 6 and 8 or 6 and 9. So with being home based, I had the great advantage of seeing them quite often, and as a dad that was great to see that. As they become less needy and they've both got their own cars now, so I don't need to be dad's cabs anymore as well. That's given me the flexibility to manage family life in a different way. Yeah. But it gives us a chance to go away. All 4 of us still go away on holiday. I think mainly because the kids know we're still paying for it. That often swings it for them. Yeah. But yeah, it's just managing family life in a different way now. Certainly, it gave me the advantage of being able to be there at sports days, being able there to school concerts, all the things that traditionally fathers and mums as well, but traditionally fathers have missed those things. So it gave me great insight in, it gave me a great opportunity to share that with them.
Yeah. Do you think they actually sort of fully appreciated that at the time? Because little Doddsy, even now, she's only 11, but, she sometimes now will throw the whole, if I can't, make something because I'm away working or something, she'll throw it all in my face about, you missed this and you're never here. And then I, throw back that I coached her netball team and I've been to the sports days. I've done, all the things that most working people in corporate roles don't get the chance to do. And of course, then that quietens her down a tad. But I do wonder when she's older whether, she'll naturally look back and actually see it in a more positive light. Obviously, at the moment, it's a good opportunity to argue.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't found that. I made it a bit of a personal rule of mine that if I promised my kids I would be somewhere, I definitely was. I never ever let them down. So I was very careful not to overpromise. Yeah. If I couldn't make something because I was busy or I was away, I was traveling or whatever, I would say at the outset I can't make that. But if I ever promised to go to a sports day or a concert or something, I would definitely go. Even if work came up, I would not take that work. I would because the fact I'd promised something to my kids was more important than work to me.
Yeah. No, that's great. So tell us about how you get done what you do. So how do you manage your task list and your time?
Not in a very sophisticated manner, really. I just use Outlook calendar. Just use Outlook, to be honest. I don't use anything particularly other than that. I use Outlook calendar and the tasks section of that. I calendarize, is that a word? I book. I book every little thing, even if it's exercise. I book that in. If it's whatever it is, I book that in my Outlook calendar. So my day is organised to the minute, I suppose. Didn't used to be like that. That's only the last couple of years where I've kind of systemised a bit better. Before that, I was a bit chaotic. But that's what I use. So I don't use anything particularly other than that, Joe.
No. Okay, that's good. It obviously works, and that is actually, I mean, can sort of flippantly say, oh, at least it works, but actually, that's the whole thing. Productivity and being organised is also individual, isn't it? And if you find something that works, you don't need all the sort of bells and whistles, do you? You just
correct. I mean, and obviously nowadays that's the same counters on my mobile phone. It's on my laptop I take away with customers. It's on my desktop that I'm speaking from now. So obviously my diary is to hand at all times, and my tasks. And my day is to hand at all times. I do use a few other apps and things like that, but that's the only calendar planning tool I use.
So tell us about what the other apps are. What else do you use?
I use a CRM system called Capsule.
Yes, so do I.
Yeah, mainly because it's free, which always helps.
I can tell you that I did check a lot of them when I was changing a while ago, and I couldn't find one that I preferred. Although, albeit, I think if I was looking again now, I might look at Lucy Whittington's Connectably, I think it's called, isn't it?
Yes.
That looks really good.
I actually sat next to Lucy at a conference about 3 weeks ago.
Well, there you go. I'm supposed to say Lucy Whittington and Gareth somebody, but I can't remember what his surname is. So I I was
at the same conference as both Gareth and Lucy last in Edinburgh a few weeks ago. So I use Capsule CRM. So anything that's related to my customers, emails, contact information. It works via Dropbox. So you send sort of a Dropbox blind copy, and it gets copied into your CRM system. Works for me. Again, you can set tasks and call somebody back, and you can put that in your schedule. So that works for me. I use I always want to say Postify, but it's Postfitty as well.
Okay. Not heard of that one. What does that do?
Postfitty, Postfitty.
They didn't really think that through, did they, when they were naming it?
No. I use that to schedule some posts on social media. So I don't schedule many. I try to be me, and I try to respond live. But I found that there is a degree of benefit of scheduling some things. So this post to LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Either all three at the same time, or obviously you can specify which one. So I preload some posts, and it puts them in, it schedules them 12 months out, so I know exactly what's going where at one particular time. And again, I was going to say again, that's free, but it's not. There is a fairly small cost on that, but it's very good if anybody wants to try those. And I've also started to use Missing Letter, which I think has come up on a previous couple of podcasts of yours. Started to use that.
Recommended it to us,
very much in its infancy. That basically campaigns your blog posts. It makes them, it's sort of, you can use them over and over again. It picks it up automatically as well, which is cute that it does that. So I'm only just starting to use that. The other, if you can call it an app, but the one I'm always on nowadays is LinkedIn. So I use the LinkedIn phone app and PC app to keep up to speed with a couple of hashtags that I follow, and also posting to LinkedIn. That's where I found my audience generally congregates. So that's my order of priority in terms of LinkedIn.
I think LinkedIn's much more sociable now. It's much chattier now. Do you find that too?
I do, and I like that. The LinkedIn police don't tend to like it.
No, I think they keep telling you it's not Facebook, don't they?
Yes, exactly. But that only serves to make me want to do it more.
Oh, you rebel, you.
So, but yes, I think it's still business orientated. It isn't Facebook, and I don't really, conduct my business on Facebook. It is very different, but it is getting a more human face now, and I like that. Before it was generally people sort of CV boasting a little bit. Whereas now I think it's a little bit more helpful, a little bit more human. So I've noticed that, Joe, as well over the last few months, and I think it's a step forward.
Yes, yeah. I was talking to somebody today about the changes in social media over the last however long. It's somebody that I worked with, quite a few years ago when I was still doing the social media stuff, and I was saying how things have changed and how it's so noisy, and I'm a bit tired of some of it. But I'm actually thinking I might focus back on LinkedIn a bit because of the fact that it is about those one-to-one connections and conversations more so than it might have been in the past. It was quite broadcast before, as you say, wasn't it? It was like,
Yes,
look at
it
me,
was.
whereas
It
now
was.
there is quite a lot of conversation, and I don't tend to join it. I do tend to be on Facebook, but as you say, my sort of target audience are in LinkedIn more than Facebook. So maybe I'll see you over there.
Okay. Okay.
I do check it every day, but I don't tend to do too much on it other than share, an article occasionally and like stuff. But yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I do quite a bit of work on LinkedIn. I try and I do actually spend 10 to 15 minutes in the morning and 10 to 15 minutes in the afternoon on LinkedIn. So that's either posting or more often than not responding to posts, commenting on posts, liking articles, things like that. And I found that to be quite useful. I found I've got business from that, so that's been great.
Yes, yeah. So you mentioned the concept of outsourcing. So let's talk about sharing what you do. Who helps you to get things done?
As far as admin goes, I have a virtual assistant, and she helps me. She's at the moment developing a brand new website for me, and as well as that, she does a lot of the admin things around the website. So sign up forms, downloads, those sorts of things, the more sort of techie area. So she does that and does that very well. I outsource my accounts to an accountant, obviously, and I outsource my VAT to a bookkeeper. When I first started, I did my VAT in the 2 years I mentioned earlier, where I was kind of doing everything all the time for 18 hours a day. One of that was doing my own VAT, and it drove me mad, and I wasn't very good at it. So I now outsource that and have done for the last 10 years now, and that's been a burden off my mind to do that.
And it's funny, isn't it, how sometimes it can feel so onerous to actually go through the process of outsourcing something, but once you have done, you can't imagine why you never did it in the first place.
Correct. Yes. I think it's that fear of letting go, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And I've been through that, and I think all business owners go through that fear of letting go. But it dawned on me that I couldn't do everything. It wasn't productive to do everything. It wasn't my strength. So I came to the conclusion that I'll outsource it to somebody where it is their strength and they love doing it. Because it frees up my mind or my time to do other things that are probably more profitable financially, but certainly more profitable in terms of mindset.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I can use that time better. So since I realised that I can't do it, I have outsourced most things now.
Yeah, I'm thinking I might do a bit of an outsource focus for the next few weeks, because I do outsource a reasonable amount, but there's loads of other stuff that I probably end up, a bit like you said, end up doing it because I can, but I may not be the best person, or I may not be the one who loves it.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
We should spread the love, shouldn't we, by letting other people.
Yeah, we should. We should. And it is really this fear of letting go. I can remember when I did let go, and even then I was kind of thinking, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. But I then had to divorce myself even further and say, no, Gary, they're the experts of that. You're the expert of what you do. They wouldn't interfere with what you do.
No.
So leave them to it, and they've never let me down. So I chose well, and I'm very pleased with my team around me.
And how did you find people?
I networked for my bookkeeper and accountant. I used to run a networking group. I live in Grantham in Lincolnshire, and I used to run the local breakfast networking group for Networking, who I think you may well have heard of. So I ran the local Grantham breakfast meeting for a couple of years, and out of that I found my bookkeeper and my accountant, and they're still with me 8 or 9 years later. So I guess it was the know, like, trust area, really. The VA is in America, and she came recommended from Sharon Gaskin, who you mentioned earlier at the introduction. Sharon Gaskin recommended her, so I use her. She's over in the States. So that's how I found them.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. So what about yourself? How do you look after yourself and make sure that you're fit enough to do your traveling and that's, you know, that energy that we need at the front of a room when we're training and so on?
I'm better at that now. I now watch what I eat. I was a bit of a backstory, I suppose. In the stress of my own business and various other things, and me not looking after myself. 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes,
right?
And I was put on insulin. So I was injecting insulin twice a day. I guess looking back, at the time it didn't feel like it, but I guess I was in a bad place mentally. I guess. You know, I didn't have treatment about it, but I'm kind of looking back with benefit of hindsight. I was in a bad place. So my weight rocketed. I was eating terribly, and it was only going to end one way, and that wasn't going to be good. So 2 years ago, June the 3rd, 2016, I remember the day. I resolved to look after myself better.
Why do you remember the day particularly?
Because that was the turning point in my life, I suppose. I've never smoked, but I guess it's like smokers remember the day they finish smoking.
Yes,
I just came home. I came home from the doctors. My weight was 18 stone, so I had really ballooned to really bad levels. The doctor said to me, I need to increase my insulin. I needed to increase my insulin because my blood sugars were all over the place. And I just came home, spoke to my wife, Nikki, and I said, look, he's recommended I put my insulin up. And I just said, there must be another way. There has to be a better way to do this. Because I just can't keep increasing insulin all the time. It's not going to end well. And Nikki said, why don't you try the low carb diet? At the time, there's a guy called Michael Mosley on TV. He did quite a few. I think he did the 5-2 diet, things like that. So she said, why don't you try the low carb diet? So since that day, June the 3rd, 2016, I've with the odd lapse, I still have the odd lapse, but generally, more often than not, I eat fewer carbs. I hardly eat bread anymore. My downfall was crisps. I hardly eat crisps anymore. So I watch really my carbohydrate intake. And I've lost 3 stones in weight, so I'm still slightly overweight. But if you'd asked me 2 years ago, would I lose 3 stone in weight, I'd have laughed at you. So it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I now look after myself better. I eat better. I make sure I sleep better and I get to bed earlier. Just generally look after myself better. I'm better at closing the office door as well. Remember we said around 18 hours a day when I first started. I now make a definite attempt. It's difficult when you're at home to separate home from work, but I now do make a definite attempt. I close my door at between 6 and 6:30 in an evening, and that's it. I don't go back to it until the following day now. So I switch off better. I walk every day. I do at least 5,000, 6,000 steps every day. So I brought that into my routine. And that's really a bit. I suppose eating better and treating myself better, respecting myself and treating myself better, because and what that's enabled me to do is to have more energy in the training room. I don't come home tired, exhausted for a couple of days. I'm better. I generally feel mentally better as well.
Do you think it's a sort of, is the word zeitgeist? There's a lot. I started looking at this sort of stuff after my mum died and my father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer and all this sort of stuff. That was, I don't know, 5 years ago. But it seemed like a lot of the people that we've
sort of developed our businesses alongside have started talking in terms of health and nutrition. Do you think it, I mean, I think it's partly our ages probably, but do you think that it's sort of a topical thing, that people are more aware than ever?
Yes, I think so. I mean, people are more open about mental illness and everything now, aren't they? And it's a shame that they felt they weren't able to before, and that's a step forward, because it's so important we maintain our health and look after our health. Mindfulness has come in as well in the last few years, and I guess that's linked to self-care as well, being in the moment. So yes, I think there is a little bit more visibility around these areas of help, and I think it's a good thing. I'm a little bit skeptical about some of the things, but generally I've found things that work for me, and I do mentally feel a lot better there. My self-care is a lot better now. It couldn't have got worse. I'm now off insulin. I just treat through diet and tablets, so I don't have to inject anymore. So I'm really proud of myself, but I've still got a way to go. But I've made real good inroads, and my life is a lot better now.
Yeah, you should be very proud. You could have been one of the case studies on his TV program.
I could have been. Yeah, I could have been. But yeah, it's funny. It's funny how I'll always remember the dates when I changed. I guess it's I just needed to relaunch myself in my own head.
Yes.
And that was the date when I decided to change.
So
I should have done it years ago, but that was the date I decided to do it.
Yes, yeah. So talk about what else you do to relax. You obviously have more time in the evenings when you're not working now, by the sound of it. You're walking, obviously doing a bit more in the sleep department. But what do you do to relax and enable you to sort of recover from the stresses and strains of your business?
Three things really. I'm a big sports fan. I mainly armchair sport now, although I am a season ticket holder at Chesterfield Football Club, where I was born, my hometown.
Oh, were you? I was born in I was born in Sheffield, but we lived in Dronfield, so not too far from Chesterfield.
Yeah, well, there you go. Dronfield, only 4 or 5 miles, I guess, up the road from me. So I was born in New Bowl, Chesterfield. And I still go up to see my beloved Spirites, although they are plummeting down the league, and in fact have gone out the league now.
You'll be very pleased. I actually watched the England match this week and quite enjoyed it. I don't normally watch football.
Well,
I was trying to carry on, but
I don't think we score 6 goals every time, Joe, either.
It seems so easy.
So yes, I'm a sports fan. Used to play quite a bit of sport when I was younger, but it's mainly armchair stuff now. Love music as well. I'm a big music fan. And latterly we've discovered the benefits of box sets on Netflix. So we're at the moment watching Designated Survivor. We're in the middle of that. And Stranger Things was a good one as well. I remember watching that a year or so ago. So a bit of a fan of box sets now.
Do you sort of binge watch them? Do you have to watch like loads in one go? And do you have to wait for your wife to be available to watch as well? You can't do it on your own, otherwise you get in trouble. That's how it all works.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. Yes, so we have to have a pact to agree that we'll watch some, but then we start off, should we just watch the next episode, and then we'll watch another one.
Yeah. So exactly. Then, does it?
yeah. My wife wasn't into Stranger Things, so that was a solo pleasure. But most of them we watched together. That's right.
And of course, Saudi Arabia time, she's not allowed to watch anything.
Correct. Although Netflix comes into its own in Saudi Arabia, because the Saudi television is a bit of an acquired taste, should we say?
Yeah.
all overdubbed American sitcoms and things like that.
Yes, yeah. So you talked about I'm sure I'm not making this up. Somewhere on the line, you talked about personal development, which is not a surprise knowing you. So what do you do to keep developing and to learn yourself?
Mainly books. I try and read a business book, at least one business book a month. that doesn't mean I don't read other things. I read lots of sports books as well, but I try to, in terms of self-development, business development, I try to read one a month. I'm currently reading a book called Known by Mark Schaefer, who I saw speak at an Edinburgh conference the year before I met Lucy, the one I've just met Lucy in recently.
That was content marketing, wasn't it? Do I remember you saying?
That's right, Content Marketing Academy one in Edinburgh. I saw Mark Schaefer speak last year, and I've just bought his latest book, which is called Known, and that's around personal branding. I've just got the book here. The Handbook for Building and Unleashing Your Personal Brand in the Digital Age. So it's very much around online marketing of you as your brand. So I wanted to read that, and I'm really enjoying that. So I improve through that way. I also try and attend marketing conferences. I'm a salesman by background, so marketing doesn't come naturally to me. I've got better at it, but I'm not a marketer by training. I've kind of learned by doing, really. But it's something I need to work on, so I try to attend marketing conferences, at least one of those a year, and I always walk away with a handful of things, really significant things to do, and I implement those. I try and.
I was going to say, that's the question: do you implement them?
I'd be a liar if I said I implemented them all, but I implement the vast majority of them. Yes.
Good.
I've got better at identifying fewer learnings and doing more of them than lots of learnings and doing few of them.
Yes. Oh, I like that.
I've got better at that.
Yes. Through trial and error, as we all do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's running a business is very much like that. We all make mistakes. I've made mistakes, but it's very much trial and error. That's the beauty of it. You can change very quickly from something that's not going so well. You can learn from that and move on from that and change it. So that's the great benefit we have.
Yes, yeah. So you mentioned routines at some stage through our conversation. Do you have particular routines that you have in place to get stuff done and to sort of keep that healthy outlook going, as we've talked about? Have you got things?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of some of the items we've touched upon, I schedule a daily walk, so I make sure I do that. If I'm with customers, I'll schedule that during the day. So I'll park. I keep an app of my steps, so I'll park the furthest away that I can, and I'll use that to put some steps in. I'll take the stairs rather than the lift. All those things that add to my daily walk. It's easy when I'm at home because I have a route I follow, but when I'm with customers, it's less easy. But I make sure I do. I said about 10 minutes on LinkedIn morning and afternoon, so I do about maximum half an hour on LinkedIn every day, split into two 10 to 15 minute bursts in the morning and the afternoon. So I have a couple of hashtags already set up. One is negotiation and one is sales as my hashtags. So I look through those and see if I can contribute to discussions on those two topics. I close the door at 6 or 6:30, as I've mentioned earlier. Another routine, I listen to music every day. I'm quite a bit of a music fan, so I find that helps my mood. So sometimes that can be quite music helps me concentrate, so quite sort of mellow type stuff. Sometimes classical stuff, actually, things like that just helps me concentrate a bit more. And then other times it's more upbeat kind of things, just to get myself focused and in the zone, Joe.
Yes, it's interesting. When I worked in corporate and worked from home, I used to listen to classical music when I was working because of that focus thing, as you say. I always used to think, if I have music with words, I'm just going to sing along and not be able to do whatever. But like you now, I have different types of music for different types of activity. It's almost like I broke out of the corporate rule.
Yes. Yes.
I still can't have songs that I'd sing along to whilst I'm trying to write, because then the words all get muddled up.
Exactly. And I do work in silence often. If I've got a particular concentrated area I need to focus on, I'll work in silence. But I do listen to music at some point during every day, and again that gives me a bit of a boost. Yes, yeah.
So what about on those days where things don't go right, where you have a bit of a bad day? How do you deal with that?
I keep it in perspective now, I think, would be my answer to that. It's easy to get downhearted, to think it will never work, to think I'm wasting my time. And those are all thoughts that I had in my first 2 or 3 years of setting the business up.
Yeah.
Where's my next customer going to come from? I'm trying so hard. I'm networking here, there, everywhere. I try and keep things in perspective now. When work is slow, I know that it will come round. It will come back again. So I've become more philosophical around it now. I make sure when I'm not delivering programs with customers, I'm doing something to move my business forward, even if only in a small way. I'm writing an article or I'm doing something like that. So I make sure when things fall through, things get cancelled or things don't go right, that I don't get too downhearted now about it. I guess it's easier when business is better. I guess it's easier to say that, but that's generally where I am now, is keep it better, in more better perspective now.
I think it's about experience as well, isn't it? When you've gone through some of those cycles, you know that they'll just come round again, don't you?
Correct. Yeah. It sounds a bit glib to say something will crop up, but after a certain period of time, it often does.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's interesting. It doesn't just happen. There is some reason why it's happened. It's somebody you networked with 3 years ago, or it's somebody who recommended you, having worked with you. There is, it doesn't just happen. There are reasons why that's happened. So I try and use that time productively now, rather than beat myself up as I used to do.
Yes. Yeah. I suppose it's seeing that evidence that those things that you are doing in those gaps, as you say, eventually do come to some sort of fruition, even if it's quite a while ahead.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So what about those days when you end the day knowing that you've had the chance to live more? And I'd say that's about doing more of what you want to do, not the stuff that you feel you should do or you have to do. What does that day look like?
That looks like a day where I've seen something new or learnt something new, really. So I may well have travelled. I mean, one day that I really remember that when I was in Saudi, for an example that to sort of give you in terms of when I've lived more, is I was flying back, having delivered a program out in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and had to touch down in Dubai. Only really touched down in the airport. I didn't see much of Dubai, but we flew past the Burj Khalifa at night, and it's all illuminated and all lit up. It's a huge. Have you ever been? Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. No.
It's a huge building, and I thought, wow, I'm being paid to fly on this flight, and I've just flown past the Burj Khalifa, one of the great sites in the world.
Yes.
That's when I'd lived more, because I'd seen something new.
Yeah.
And that means that I was doing something that I never thought when I was growing up in Chesterfield that I'd ever do. So that to me is a definition of a great day.
Lovely. Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate that one. I think and it's taking those moments, isn't it, to realise those sorts of things as well, isn't it? I think sometimes we let those go by, but actually stopping, I think, is the key, isn't it?
Yeah, it's realising how lucky I am in my life to have the chance to do that. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you.
It's one thing I hope I never take for granted. I want to always have that thrill.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. So thank you for joining me on the podcast. It's gone by in a flash. Been really interesting talking to you, and probably talking to you more than I've ever talked to you, because we've talked through social media and once in person at an event. And here we are. We've done 45 minutes.
Warts and all now, Joe.
Exactly. It's brilliant. So tell people how they can find out more about you and connect with you.
Fairly simply, it's all in my name generally. So my website is www.garygorman.co.uk. Twitter, I'm Gary Gorman. On LinkedIn, I'm Gary Gorman, and on Instagram, I'm the Gary Gorman.
Ooh, does that mean there was another one?
As opposed to any other one, yeah, I'm the Gary Gorman, exactly. So, but I suppose my main port of call, if people need to find out a bit more about me, a few more articles and blogs and so on, it's on my new website, which is www.garygorman.co.uk. Thank you, Joe.
Lovely. Thank you.
All this information is available in the show notes. If you go to the link powertolivemore.com/ in this case 92, you'll get those notes there. And in last week's newsletter, I shared the blog post that I created, which shares some of the tools that I talked about in last year's newsletters. And so there were 3 more that I particularly focused on in the newsletter, and they were Text Expander, which is a tool that I use to save snippets of content to add into documents and emails when you enter a shortcode. So rather than having to type the whole thing out, you can just remember something that's more easy to remember and it'll replace that for you. For example, I use it to keep my business's registered number easy to type, because I can't remember the number, but I can remember to type my code, which I use ## to let the system know that I want it to replace whatever I type in next. So I do ## reg number, and then it automatically puts that number in instead for me. And when I publish my latest podcast, I send an email to my podcast guest to tell them that I've published it, and it's got loads of information in there. And I just type in #, your podcast is live, and then the whole email comes up, and actually it allows me to fill in some gaps like the number of the podcast and the link to where they can download images from and that sort of thing. So I don't have to go searching for the email and type it all out again, or all that sort of thing. It just happens automatically. So it's really good for productivity, and it syncs across all iOS devices. I think it does Windows as well now, which is something it didn't always do. But there's other options. I used to use something called Shortkeys for Windows, if that's what you're using. There's also an iCloud Chrome extension for Windows, and I started using that because I wanted a way to sync my Chrome bookmarks on my laptop, which was Windows, with my iPad and iPhone, where I use Safari. And so if you do a search for iCloud Chrome extension for Windows, you can add that extension and it will sync those across so that you've got your bookmarks appearing on all your devices. And then the last one I shared is Todoist, which is my preferred to-do list app. I used to be renowned for changing my to-do list process all the time, so I'd focus more on getting myself organised in my new system, much more than actually getting the stuff done. But no more, because I have actually stuck with Todoist for a long time. I can't remember how long, but years. And I love it because it's actually really simple, but it's also really sophisticated at the same time. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you want to do something and you want a really simple to-do list manager, then that works. Todoist works for that. But if you want something that is more filtered, so you can create projects, you can tag tasks, and then you can create filters that say, show me these things from this project that are tagged with that tag, and it just means that you can, if you're like me and you what I call slice and dice your to-do list, so that you've got lots of different views to give you variety to motivate you to get it done, but also to keep things convenient from a getting things done point of view, GTD, where if I'm out and about, I can click on my errand label and it tells me what things I need to do when I'm outside of the house. If I'm going somewhere and I've only got 3 hours at home, then I'll probably look at my desk tag so that I can do all the things that I need to do at home before I leave, because I know that I can't do those later in the day. So it can give you that sort of sophistication, as well as I said, the simple stuff too. So those are the 3 that I shared on the newsletter last week: Text Expander, the iCloud Chrome extension for Windows, and Todoist. And if you remember last week, I also asked if you are a home-based coach or consultant, or if you know somebody who is based at home and is a coach or consultant. I'd really appreciate it if you could go to my survey, which is powertolivemore.com/survey, or if you could forward that to the people that you know that fit that criteria, because I'd really like to get some information around the sorts of frustrations, needs, and also things that people enjoy about working from home. It'd be really helpful if you could do that for me, and anyone who completes the survey gets the chance to download my ebook about organising your home office. So I'd really appreciate it if you could do that, or at least forward it on to somebody, or perhaps share it on your social media or something like that. And again, it's powertolivemore.com/survey. And finally, just to remind you, the show notes for this week's show with Gary are at powertolivemore.com/92, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.